Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly live talk race. My name is Jacob Hauser, and I'm a co-founder at Race. With me, our beloved co-host, as always, and our podcaster, Carla Magdalene. Hello, Carla. And our guest for today is Latifa Al Khalifa, co-founder and CEO of Clever Play Education and Training and host of the Steamcast podcast. Welcome, Latifa.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here, Jacob.
We're happy to have you. To begin with, I'd like to, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
Well, the floor is yours, so please, as
All
far
right.
as you want.
Let's see. Ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to change the world, as naive as this sounds. And so, being from Bahrain in the Middle East, I grew up with seeing wars all around me, in different countries. And I think that just gave me that impetus to want to bring world peace to the world. And that really kind of directed my attention to wanting to study politics and international studies with the goal of actually working in diplomacy, because I thought that diplomacy was the vehicle that would bring world peace to the world. And so I dove headfirst. I loved history as a kid in school as well. And when I graduated from school here in Bahrain, I went on to pursue my undergrad in Australia, and then from there to the UK, all in majoring in politics and international relations. And I had opportunities to actually serve my country at the UN for a little bit. And when I got back, I got a little bit frustrated because I started working in the diplomacy space, and I didn't see the tangible results that I wanted, which is, where is the world peace that I'm seeking? And upon that frustration, I just felt like, okay, well, I can just continue to do that, or I can try to carve a different path and get into something that I was also very much interested in, which was education. And that was when the seed was sown that I can still do something impactful in the education space, and hopefully raise kids that are more peace loving and bring that to the world. So I switched directions, and I went full force on co-creating Clever Play and opening it.
Right, that's quite an interesting journey. Yeah, that's quite an interesting journey. So, and how about you tell us a little bit more about when you made that jump into education? Where
Yeah.
did it start and where that led you to?
Sure. So the reason why we decided to start Clever Play, this was almost 3.5 years ago now, was my nephew Ali. He was only 6 years old at the time. He was our first nephew, loved him dearly. And I was very much involved with, in his life. And I remember my sister, his mom, was looking for activities for Ali to be able to do outside of school. And we started looking around here in Bahrain. We couldn't find anything that was educational, but also fun. Things that would just really tap into his interests and things that schools usually don't cover. And, when we did a lot of research, we realized, okay, well, he's missing out on all these opportunities. What are we going to do about it? Like, are we just going to sit there and complain because there isn't anything in the market? Or are we just going to try to do something about it, just fix that problem? So he has always been, the source of the inspiration behind Clever Play. So we started with that in mind, which is to be able to give him opportunities to learn things outside of a school setting. And from there, thankfully, 3.5 years on, we were able to impact over 15,000 children so far in in Bahrain, and we had opportunities to serve in other countries as well, like Saudi Arabia. So, but it all comes back to Ali.
Wow. Well, thank you, Ali. We are all thankful for that, really. Funny when you said, well, it's quite inspiring. I shouldn't say funny because you said you've been inspired by your nephew. And I think as educators, if we really look carefully at our, in our environment, we do get inspired by our learners. And I have taken actually a look at your website, and the what you are doing there with the kids, it's really inspiring. So yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, Ellie. Carla, we'd love to hear from you. I mean, Carla has been doing a great job as well, so I'm sure you'd like to share something here.
Yeah, I love the story behind why she's doing it. And there was two things that really came out to me. There was the first thing about her experience as a child and just hearing about wars and things like that. I think quite often we underestimate the value of trauma. We hear a lot of people saying things like, that trauma destroys people and all of this kind of stuff, but actually it doesn't necessarily have to. It doesn't mean it's a nice experience to go through these things, but there are ways to turn negative experiences and difficult experiences into a positive. And one of those is really common in education, actually, to hear people talk about their own painful experiences and how they use those to kind of push them to make change in the world. And I love that. And also there was another point you mentioned, Latifa, about when your nephew, and instead of complaining or keep saying, oh, there isn't something for him to do, you found things for him to do. So I love those two things. And I think if more of us do that, if we use our pain as a kind of catalyst to do good in the world, but then also come up with solutions instead of complaining, especially for children and for children's learning, I think that would definitely do a lot in the world. So yeah, I love that.
Latifa, if I may jump in here, funny you mentioned before we've just started. You were talking about the word wonderful, and how you like the word wonder as well. And I've noticed again back to website, you words like mentioning words like inspiring, curiosity, playfulness, passion, and then relating those words to science. Now in education, these words are not necessarily associated with science and education. So what have you got to tell us, or educators out there, that to see that inspiring, curiosity and playfulness, passion in a way should be, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I think this is something that I face all the time, which is the misconception of what STEM and STEAM is, and just science being this like really dry subject, either black and white. It's too rigid, right? And the way that we see it is no, right? Because STEM and STEAM is all around us. Like when we're talking about the classroom, the kitchen is the classroom. Bathrooms
Yeah.
can be a classroom. The backyard can be a classroom. Really, everywhere around us, the whole world is. We're living in a STEAM world. Everything around us is really, STEM or STEAM. And so, to be able to really make connections to students and say, hey, like this is not just a dry subject that you would learn in school and has no relevance to your daily life. You can actually see how this is relevant to you. And once we start making these meaningful connections, they start to understand that what they're actually learning has real implications to what they're seeing every day. And so the way that we see it is, curiosity is a wonderful quality in all scientists. Why do they go to the lab to start experimenting? They're curious to figure out, like, is this going to work out or not? And if it doesn't work out, like, what do I have to do? I have to, start to create another hypothesis. And we're very much, I think this is what the learning process is at the end of the day, is that, you put like these really lofty questions that you want answers for, and you're curious to figure out like what are these answers. Just to go back to your question about like science and how is science related to curiosity and playfulness and all that stuff. I think this is why we do what we do, because we try to lower the barrier of entry to STEM and STEAM and say, hey, there's a playful side to it. So the way that we actually introduce it to children is through play. That play is such a strong medium today. And sometimes we yell at kids and say, stop playing, but in actuality, they're learning as well. And so we try to strike that balance between giving them, playful learning opportunities to get, I guess, messy with STEM and STEAM, to understand these concepts in a very playful manner, and to be able to better understand themselves in the process as well. Yeah.
I may have missed a bit of that, so sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go back if you'd like,
please,
or if you have a
please
follow-up
do.
question. Yeah. So I was saying, just I totally agree about some people thinking that STEM, STEAM might be this like dry subjects, dry disciplines, and the way that we approach it is we actually try to to have like that playful attitude and side to it. And so what we try to do is we merge play with STEM and STEAM. And so we're like, that misconception of what STEM and STEAM is or isn't is what we try to break. And like I said, I was just talking about how we encourage children to be more curious about, the experiments they're about to do, just as a scientist would. We encourage them to start thinking as engineers would, like asking a lot of questions, figuring out how things work. And if they don't work, they go back to the drawing board to try again. And, these skills at the end of the day are life skills. And I think that's, and we try to do it by giving kids the opportunity to do what they do best, which is play, and make learning joyful in the process, because we believe very strongly, and it's one of our core educational values, is that learning is a joyful process.
Oh no, it is absolutely, and science nowadays supports all what you've been saying, to be honest, and all what it needs from us to take that courageous bubbly step and just admit it and push schools and educational organizations to really to just admit it and just follow it. Carla, if I may leave you with the comments and questions, please.
Yeah, we've got Renu. Hi, Renu is supporting us as always. She's here. Renu says, really like the conversation and connecting life learnings with happenings around. Thanks for sharing it, Latifa. Curiosity, playful attitude, and making learning joyful is required in the classrooms. So yeah, very insightful. One of the things I was thinking when you were talking, Latifa, was about children just being natural scientists. If you want the best scientists, get in there early, because they have that curiosity and they have the risk-taking that's necessary to be a good inventor, a good discoverer, a good creator. And they have it in bucket loads naturally by default from a young age. And it makes me laugh when I hear people saying things like, oh, we need to teach creativity. I think that's a sad state of affairs if we need to teach creativity, because actually that means it's somehow been unlearned, and now we're reteaching it. Actually, we're not teaching creativity, we're reteaching it. And the same with curiosity, you can't teach it, you can only reteach it, and it's lost. That means it's been lost. But by these kinds of activities and organizations, it means that children can keep that, hopefully. And if it is lost, then we can get it back, not through the classroom, because actually classrooms, sometimes it's a struggle in the classroom because it's a different type of learning environment.
Right.
And it's, both are necessary. Sometimes you do need that formal approach to learning, but when you have people such as Latifa who make their own ways to provide something outside of school, I think that's great as well, because it helps parents that bit more as well, to be able to keep that curiosity and, you know, that natural, authentic scientist alive and experimenting.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, Carla, like two things jump at me. So the first one is that's exactly the reason why we are adamant on, you know, early years, you know, transforming early childhood education, because we believe very strongly that, you know, to be able to really make a change down the line, we have to start early on. And capitalize on that. So that's the first thing. And I think honestly, like early childhood, just as a space, it's underinvested in, right? The second thing I would say to that is one of the reasons why we exist as well is, you know, obviously not taking anything away from schools, because we don't do what they do, right? I mean, schools, there are things that we don't claim that we do. But what is also important is, you know, schools don't always have the opportunity to give children, you know, the opportunity to discover who they are, what things they enjoy, right? Because there is a, you know, a curriculum that they'll have to abide by, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, I'm speaking with a lot of parents, especially like this one boy who's been with us from the very beginning. His name is Faisal. And you know, we were talking to his mom, and she said one of the reasons why I have enrolled him and continued to keep him at Clever Play is because, you know, he's discovering his interests, he's discovering his passions, he's learning so much. And I think that's again a wonderful thing, to be able to give children the opportunity to, you know, to understand what kind of interests they have and passions, etc., because they can always build on them for the future.
Um, and now, Latifa, if so, I know that you work with schools. If correct me if I'm wrong, there must have been challenges bringing, you know, all those concepts. If you would like to tell us a little bit more about what challenges you faced.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started out, again, 3.5 years ago, we started approaching some schools here in Bahrain, and you know, they asked us to come in and facilitate the classes on their behalf. So this would work on two fronts: either that we would go in after school and they would have, you know, like their after school activities for their students. So we would, you know, we like basically, you know, they'd outsource that activity portion to us, and we'd go in with, you know, with our instructors and, you know, our props and materials and all that stuff. Or you know, some schools may have, you know, like something like genius hours, where they, you know, it would be embedded in the school system, and we would go in during school hours and take over that 1 hour class, you know, once a week, for example. So when we first started doing that, what we realized was that a lot of schools had a challenge with knowing where to plug it in exactly. So some schools, like I said, who had, you know, the genius hours, they figured, okay, this is the best place to, you know, to plug it in. Other schools that offered after school said that. But the other challenge was a lot of teachers felt as though STEM and STEAM is not for them, you know, because they didn't have the background, and they were afraid of approaching it as a subject, as a discipline, to even teach it. And you know, upon hearing those two challenges specifically, the third one was actually financial. You know, because again, like it's the school is, you know, they'll have to pay for these kinds of things. So in any case, upon hearing, you know, these different challenges, we figured, okay, well, it's great that we're able to go to some of these schools and you know, give, you know, their students this opportunity to engage in what we do. But
That's right.
honestly, how many schools can we scale up to, you know, without having to scale up our own resources, human resources and all that stuff? And that
Right.
actually got us thinking, and saying, okay, well, we're happy with where we are, but we want to be able to impact a lot more students. We want to be able to have a lot more students get a taste of what we do. And so that's the reason why we have built, an online platform now that gives teachers the opportunity to run our lessons the same way we would successfully in their classrooms, whether it's in school, after school. We lowered the barrier of entry so much so that, all of our lessons have been like, we've written them. They have video guided instructions.
Right.
There's a step-by-step process that they follow. So really eliminating that fear of approaching STEM or having to do the research to be able to do it. It's all done for you. You can literally just, run it the same way we would. And again, that goes back to a problem that we saw and we kept on hearing, and we said, all right, well, what can we do to be able to provide a solution to? So
Yeah, that's interesting. Carla, any thoughts upon that?
Yeah, I definitely can relate to what Latifa's saying. I was both a classroom educator doing special education for a long time. And I saw the difference between my role and how much I was able to engage with my students and how much I was able to bring creative activities. And I had a lot of leverage and a lot of freedom to move. But a lot of other classroom educators who were tasked with teaching the curriculum couldn't do that. And even at the primary level, where there's often a lot of pressure on teachers, there's this myth that teachers can spend a lot more time playing and creating activities than they actually can in reality. It just doesn't work practically. And even the best educators fail to do it because there's just so much paperwork, so much pressure. And imagine when you're teaching multiple subjects and expected to bring STEAM and be creative and, do authentic learning and all of these other things that we like to burden teachers with. It just doesn't work. It's not possible for you to do everything. So it's really nice to have people who can come in and actually bring all the resources with them. It's a treat actually for teachers when people can come in from outside with these ready-made programs that have been carefully thought through to be able to match with any curriculum. And they bring the staff and they bring the fun and they bring the enthusiasm with them. It's great for teachers as well because it helps to reignite your passion and your sense of wonder and curiosity and sense of fun while the children are also taking part in activities. And the same for parents when you can just, put a backpack on your child and take them somewhere to take part in activities that have been carefully planned for them. It's really nice. And it helps with things like teacher and parent well-being, which is what I talk about a lot. A big part of that is just overwhelm and unrealistic expectations on parents and educators to be everything to children all the time, which is just not possible. So, yeah, I think that's something that's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Carla. Latifa, sorry, I'll keep going back to your website because I don't know if you've seen it, Carla. Maybe that's something you're really looking at because there is that video that is really interesting, which is I think about us. I just keep looking at that over and over again. You see how children, enjoying really working on activities, and you can see how they I wouldn't say look like, but they really are like little scientists. They're like creative and innovative and everything. Latifa, I seen on the website you mentioned you've got two groups or two programs for two different age groups. If I may ask, a bit of logic behind it, of if we can get a bit of explanation behind that.
Sure. So basically, we cater to children between the ages of 4 to 12 years old. And the way that we break up, our sessions is we have, what we call clever explorers, which are 4 to 6, and clever makers that are 7 to 12. And obviously, the way that we design the entire learning program, the environment, the whole design process has been built with that in mind. So obviously, 4 to 6-year-olds, there are specific things that they can't do at that age that the older ones can do. And so what we try to do is we carefully create a learning program that works for that specific age group, and for the older ones the same, making it challenging enough for them to feel like this is, sometimes it's a challenge, which a good learning experience will give you both. It will give you that opportunity to do something that you're great at, but it will also challenge you a little bit to be able to grow. And so it's a balance between, like, how are you going to design that learning experience? But that's how we've been doing it, and we've been running our workshops, classes, programs, all that's camps, with these specific age groups, and it's been going really, really well, because what we end up finding is, especially with the older age group, that you'd find that they would kind of coach each other sometimes. The older ones would coach the younger ones, and the same with the younger ones, like they would help each other out. And I'm all for this. I'm all for being able to have that peer-to-peer interaction. We do a lot of like teamwork stuff, a lot of collaboration in their projects. So it's definitely building the social and human skills today that are and especially in a tech-driven world. I think having that human skills at the forefront is really, really important.
Yeah, thanks for that. Carla, the mic is yours again.
Yeah, I think this is Renu again. Renu says children should experience success and failure not as a reward and punishment, but as an information. What are your views on that, Latifa?
Can you read it one more time?
Children should experience success and failure not as a reward and punishment, but as an information. What are your views on that, Latifa?
I agree. I think it's very important to disattach from the overall outcome. I think we advocate for, the journey, the process. And we see it all the time with kids. They want the experiment to go one way, they want the project to go one way, but it doesn't. And it doesn't stop there. Disattach from the outcome, because, it's going to prevent you from going back and trying again. Whereas it's important to be able to understand that this is a process, and this is a journey. You'll have to go back, and you'll have to keep on trying, and like measuring that as successful. So we've seen a lot of kids on the verge of failure, in that specific project, but they have that mindset, like switch that, okay, like I failed at this, but that doesn't make me a failure. So literally they'll keep saying it, because again, it's one of our core values. But the other thing is they'll say, all right, well, I'm going to have to go back and do it again. So it's very important, because again, like they're probably going to fail in life, and that's the reality. They're going to fail either in a small way or in a larger way. But to be able to tackle failure head on early and say, hey, like that doesn't define me. Very important. Disattach from that failure. And two, let me go back and see what can be done, and go back to the process. So I think that's really, really important.
That's wonderful. Disattach from the outcome. That would be my takeaway. Absolutely. Latifa, you see, time has just flown by, as I promised, as Carla always says, actually. So one last word before we go away.
I think STEAM is not just the future, but it's a superpower.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's a superpower, and it's important to be able to give children the opportunity to be, superheroes, and, building super skills for the super future. It all starts with STEAM.
Thank you very much. Carla, let's hear from you.
Definitely agree with that. When I saw the website, I thought to myself, these kids look like they're in the workplace. They look like they're just at work, and you could just imagine them growing up. and transitioning through the different stages of childhood and just continuing to do the same things that they've been doing since they were small. And I don't know who it was that said that play is children's work. There's a quote in education that we often say when we talk about the importance of play. And that's what I thought when I saw the pictures on the website. I thought, yeah, play is children's work. Whatever they're doing when they're little, and it's all about getting into it and enjoying it and being in that kind of flow state, and having that growth mindset that, okay, this didn't work, let me screw it up, throw it away, and just keep it moving. And when you see that, it's a really beautiful thing. So if whatever we can do to keep that going in children, I think we're on the right track. So thank you for what you're doing, Latifa, I think would be my final word.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. I had such a great time.
Thank you very, very much. And again, really been a pleasure, Latifa. And maybe we'll have you, once again, and just Arabic, as we said, maybe.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm up for it.
Thank you very much. Really a pleasure having you.
Thank
you. See you next time. Thank you, everyone who is watching, and or we will be watching the recording. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carla. Thank you.